Now that we've went through our section 2 review of all the different topics that we've covered, and this was by far the most content dense section in this entire course, let's go and let's understand some more information, some exam tips, and look at some practice questions. So here we primarily covered computers, computer infrastructure, as well as networking, cloud computing, and virtualization. One thing I wanted to reiterate, all of these are separate topics. This section has a specific name, but we covered so many different topics in this section that we really had to cram things in here just to make sure that we were able to cover everything. So they're all part of the bigger Tech Plus exam, and more widely, they're part of general IT knowledge areas that you need to know about and that you're going to encounter in your day-to-day and in your career. Let's go over some exam tips that you should know about. So let's talk about internal and external components first. Internal components include the CPU, RAM, motherboard, any type of storage, as well as power supply unit that supplies power to the motherboard and thus the rest of the computer, and any other sort of other peripherals, or rather, first, let's go over internal and external components. First, in terms of internal, those are internal to our computer or laptop or device case. That includes CPU, RAM, motherboard, storage, a PSU, and any other type of expansion cards as well, something like a GPU or a graphics card or anything else. Next up is our external components. Those are keyboards, mouse, printers, monitors. And if a question says something inside of a system unit, we're talking about internal components. If it says connecting to a computer or plugging into a USB port or connection, it's probably a peripheral. Second, let's talk about CPU, RAM, and storage a little bit more in depth. So CPU, it executes instructions. It obviously sits on the motherboard directly internal to the computer, like we just talked about. And if you see anything speed related in terms of gigahertz or GH lowercase z, that's probably CPU because it manages a lot with performance and processing. So if you see anything about processing, GHz, or MHz rather, if you see any of those, that's when you should probably start thinking this might be a CPU question or central processing unit question. From there, we talked about random access memory or RAM. Remember, RAM is temporary in nature. So RAM is what is working when the computer is powered on. Once that computer is powered off, all the information the RAM was working with gets cleared. That means that RAM has volatile memory, meaning once the computer or laptop or device is shut off and there's no more power, that information is lost. The cutoff of power is what cuts the information off, and any sort of restart, any loss of power, any reboot, things like that will clear the memory of the RAM. Anything about currently running programs, any questions about those are probably going to be RAM related. Now, obviously, be a little bit careful, but if you see a question that's heavily talking about what's managing open programs or what matters the most for opening a ton of different programs or browser tabs, it's probably RAM. Next up is storage, hard drive, and solid state drives. These are our long-term storage, and these are non-volatile. So remember, long-term storage, hard drives, solid state drives, flash drives, SD cards, things like that. And those are non-volatile, meaning that files and information using this storage or this memory lasts even after shutdown or even after loss of power. Here's an exam trap to avoid. If power is lost and data is gone, it's most likely RAM, not storage, not hard drive, not solid state drives. Again, if power is lost and then the data is cleared, that's not going to be long-term storage or non-volatile. You're looking at RAM, which is volatile storage. Next up is hard drives and solid state drives. You're going to see questions about these, at least one on the exam. Hard drives are mechanical, they're slower, and they're cheaper than SSDs. SSDs have no moving parts, they're much faster, but they're often quite a bit more expensive. For faster boot times, you're looking at solid state drives. For faster file transfer, for faster accessing of files, you're looking at solid state drives. Lowest cost per gigabyte, hard drives. Anything mechanical, spinning disk, that's hard drives. So keep those in mind. Fourth is input versus output devices. We talked about input output a little bit last section, but input is sending some data to the computer from us. So something like a keyboard, mouse, scanner, microphone, webcam, we're giving the computer an input to work with. The computer then processes it, and then it can give us an output. So for example, it could be something like an image on a monitor. It could be a page being printed out on a printer. It could be speakers playing audio. It could be headphones playing audio. Those output devices give us something either to see, to hear, or to interact with. Next up is 5, which is ports and connectors. So we have USBs, most common for peripheral connections. There's a few types of USBs, like we talked about, for not only connections, but also USB versions or types. Those play a huge impact. Make sure you review those if you haven't already. USBs are going to come up on at least 1 or 2 questions on the exam. HDMI and DisplayPort, VGA, or DVI, those are all video. We've talked about those as video connections for your monitor, TV screen, projector, things like that. Ethernet or Ethernet is networking. So whenever you see a question about an Ethernet cable, that has to do with networking. Ethernet questions often come up with Ethernet cables or network cables. So if you get a question about a printer not being able to connect, might want to check on the network cable or Ethernet cable. In this exam, we're identifying purposes, not specs. So if it says network cable, again, Ethernet. If it says display, start thinking HDMI, DisplayPort, DVI, VGA. Obviously, always read the whole question, but start associating these to their proper type of category. And that's what that's going to help you do. 6 is power and hardware failure questions. Super simple. System won't turn on, might be power related. Random shutdowns, think power supply unit or some sort of computer overheating. Those are good places to start. If a device is not detected, look at drivers or port. You might want to look at physical connections, but additionally, remember, some types of devices do need specialized drivers that don't automatically come with the computer, or they're not what's known as plug and play. CompTIA almost always expects hardware first, not software. This is somewhat true. So when you're taking this Tech Plus specifically, don't always jump right to software. I want you to think hardware first. So if you get a question saying someone's monitor is not working, think cables first. That's what I want you to start thinking. Think, okay, power cable. Is there electricity going to the monitor? Is the monitor actual cable running to the laptop or desktop computer? And then go from there. And then obviously use our troubleshooting. We've talked about that a lot, but do things in the order of most easy to address first. 7 is mobile devices. Phone and tablets use mobile operating systems. Storage on these devices, usually it's some sort of flash or solid state drive or some sort of solid state storage. Now, obviously, phones don't have huge solid state drives like how computers do, but usually it's flash memory or it's solid state, which is very, very similar. Peripherals connect through USB and Bluetooth. For the most part, that's true. Almost all your peripherals are going to lie outside of your case or laptop case or desktop case or device, and usually you can connect through USB or Bluetooth. There's certain connections where that's not true, but for the most part, 90% of peripherals can connect through either USB or Bluetooth. 8, the last one here, is best and first wording. If you see best solution, that's looking for the most efficient, most modern solution that fits that specific use case or need. First step, remember, we just talked about this, troubleshooting. Remember your 7 troubleshooting steps from the previous section. Go with the simplest or the safest action. Don't jump into advanced fixes unless the question starts asking about those. Start with the most simple thing first. Now we're going to go into some practice questions here. So these practice questions, what I want you to do is I'm going to have you pause the video now, read the questions, and then write down your answers. Pause the video now, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to tell you the answers right after this. So let's jump into these questions. Now I'm going to read them out and answer them and give you the correct answer. Number 1, which component stores data permanently even when the computer is turned off? Remember, that's going to be our storage devices or hard drives. RAM is not able to store instructions or any sort of data permanently. Only hard drives, solid state drives, any sort of storage can do that. Question number 2, a user complains that their computer is very slow when opening multiple programs. Which component is most likely the bottleneck? So a user is complaining that their computer is slow when opening multiple programs. More than likely, that's going to be RAM, because RAM handles a lot of the bulk of the work for opening multiple programs or multiple tabs in a web browser. Number 3, which device is considered an input device? This one's very, very simple. That's C, mouse, because that allows us to actually input something. These other devices are output. Printer gives you an output. It gives you a piece of paper that something's printed on it. Speaker gives you an output, that's audio that you listen to. Monitor gives you a visual output that you can read. Next up, same thing. I'm going to have you pause the video now. Once you unpause this video, I'm going to go into explaining each question and what the right answer is. Number 4, which storage device provides the fastest boot times? That is C, solid state drive. Now, these are all different types of storage devices. Optical drives, hard drives, and CDs are not nearly as fast for storage, data transfer, or for loading up an operating system known as boot times as solid state drives. So solid state drives are the fastest data storage device that we currently have access to in today's modern technology. Number 5, a user wants the lowest cost per gigabyte for permanent file storage. That's permanent file storage. Which option is the best? That is going to be B, hard drives or HDDs. The reason why that is because hard drives give you the most bang for your buck storage-wise. They are slower than solid state drives, flash drives, but hard drives do have the most amount of storage per dollar. RAM does not make sense here. Encrypted flash drive definitely does not make sense. Encrypted flash drives do exist, but they're pretty expensive. You don't get much storage at all out of them. Solid state drives, while they're faster than hard drives, they're also quite a bit more expensive than hard drives. Number 6, our last question here, which connector is primarily used for network connectivity? That is C, Ethernet cable or network cables. USB, HDMI DisplayPort, these are not for network connectivity. USB, remember, those are mainly for our peripherals, multiple USB versions, multiple USB types, but we don't use them for network connectivity. HDMI and DisplayPort, those are monitor or video connections. And we've actually got one more set of practice questions. I forgot we have 9 in this video, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up in the next slide with the last 3. Here we have these 3 questions. Go ahead and pause the video now, write down your answers, and then I'm going to go over each correct answer. Number 7, a user reports that a computer randomly shuts down during heavy use. Which issue is most likely? So a computer is randomly shutting down. That is most likely going to be overheating or a power issue. The reason why is a corrupt application shouldn't randomly shut your computer down. Insufficient storage should not shut your computer down. File system permissions should definitely not shut your computer down. Overheating of the computer definitely can. Or if it's a power issue, something with the power supply unit or PSU, that definitely can randomly shut down your computer. So keep in mind, overheating, it can restart your computer. Power issues with the PSU or power issues in general, for example, power surge, that can definitely restart your computer too. Number 8, which hardware component connects all internal devices together? So this is inside our desktop or laptop case. This is C, our motherboard. Remember, our motherboard is like our home base. It sits inside of our desktop or laptop case, and it connects all other components right there in the case through the motherboard. Number 9, our last question here. Which port is most commonly used to connect modern peripheral devices such as keyboards and mice? That is C. USB is by far the most common way to connect device peripherals. Ethernet is not the correct answer. Ethernet, remember, is network cables, and HDMI and DisplayPort, those are again both video connections. And that's it for this video. In the next section, we're going to be talking about applications as well as software. One thing I wanted to mention, if you haven't already, make sure that you watch this entire course directly on our website. That's teachmeit.co, teachmeit.co. That's not .com, it's .co. There we have the full version of this course. We have a full-length practice exam available, and we have multiple different types of IT and Tech Plus resources for you. If you're watching this on YouTube, that's completely fine. You don't have to watch this on our website, but if you want all the resources that we give you, the course is still completely free as of right now, directly on our website. I'll see you in the next section on applications and software.